So welcome everyone again. Thank you so much for being here. I know people will be joining us as we go, and hopefully they will be able to keep track of what we're doing. So yes, I will be monitoring the chat as we go. So if you have a question along the way, feel free to either write it down or type it in the chat. And if I can address it while I'm going, I will. If not, there'll be time for questions at the end. And I'm happy we talked about expectations. Thank you again to those who submitted their questions through the form. That was really helpful because I was able to kind of tailor it more. Yeah, as I was preparing. So yes, again, so glad that you guys are here. Thanks for taking the time to be here. And yes, so this is a graduate school application bootcamp. And there's going to be many things that I address, but as I share, this is not really it's not going to have a lot of information because I feel like that's kind of easy to find. It's going to be more practical tips that you can use to be ready for the application, things that helped me. I applied just last year, so this is something that's like very, very recent. And I hope to share some of those tips with you guys. Also, if my network becomes shaky or anything, please let me know in the chat and I will, yes, hopefully go over, yes, what you guys missed. Okay, so this is what to expect in this session. The first thing we're going to talk about is programs. I know some of us are tuning in from all around the world, so I want to address that a little bit. And maybe you're not even sure what program that you want to do, so maybe that will help. We'll talk about the timeline, which I know people are looking forward to. Great. Then we'll talk about making your final list for schools. I know people who filled out questions asked about that a lot, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about fee waivers and then recommendations. So that will be about the halfway point. After that, there'll be like a Q&A session, and then we'll go into essays. So the last half of this session, or however much time is left, we will go over essays. So we'll talk about the statement of purpose, the personal statement, and just practical tips. Because like I said, you can find information practically anywhere, but this is going to be more like practical ways to make sure that your essays are great and they stand out. So the first important thing is, I know, like, I want you to take this information as coming from the right source. So I am not like an admissions expert who has, reviewed applications for years or anything like that. This is just me sharing my experience. So I was born and raised in Zambia, so I'm an international student. I came to the US in 2021 at my school, Xavier University of Louisiana in New Orleans. I was studying chemistry, so I got to do, and my first internship was at Xavier in chemistry research, and that's the lab I was in throughout my time at Xavier. Then I got to do 2 internships the following 2 summers, one at UC Davis and one at Notre Dame. And I'm very passionate about internships and just helping people, which is why this session is happening today. So I'm very happy that you guys are here. I started a website called F1 Internships, and I'll be sharing that as we go in the session. So I just graduated this May officially from Xavier, and I'll be going to Yale this fall. So like I said, I just went through this process like last year. So this is going to be things that I wish I knew, things that I learned along the way. But like I said, I'm not an expert. And I know not everyone on this call is specifically looking to the US, but I know that some of the things are relevant to everyone. But do keep in mind that my experience is US experience. So take it with a grain of salt, do your research, of course. And don't just depend on me. I'm not an expert. Yes. Okay, so the first thing is I want to know, I just want to know, like, I guess where we all are or get a general idea of who's on the call. So this is a little survey just to see where are you? Are you applying this year? Are you applying next year? Are you in undergrad right now? Or are you a master's student? Maybe you're out of school. And like I said, this just gives me a general idea of who's on the call. So unfortunately, it's not as straightforward. So you have to enter anonymous participant, and I'll put the QR code in the chat just now. But you just enter anonymous participant and put your name, and then it should take you to you just pick, and it's going to be anonymous. So if you're concerned about that, don't worry. But it's just to give me an idea of where are you guys right now. So I see someone is in undergrad applying this year. Thanks for that. And like I said, just enter anonymous. When you're filling it out, just enter anonymous participant. No need to log in or anything. And then just put your name and you should be able to enter that. So like I said, just gives me a general idea of who's on the call so that I can address accordingly. So 2 people applying this year who are in undergrad. I see someone who has some years to go. I'm so glad you're starting now. That's great. Okay, so there's like 4 people applying this year who are in undergrad. Someone's applying next year. Great. Okay, I see I guess everyone so far is in undergrad right now. which is great. It's a great time to start and get ready. Someone is out of school and applying this year. Okay. So I will be more serious. I see more people applying this year. So I'll be more serious and more urgent with everything I'm saying. But yes, I'm so glad. Like it's so great that you guys are starting now. I started the year of, well, I was getting information and stuff, but I started seriously the year of, and it worked out great, but starting early would have been very, very beneficial. So I'm glad that you guys are starting early. And then for you guys who are applying this year, this is also a great time to just like cover all your bases and make sure that nothing is like missing out. So yes, thank you so much for voting in the poll. I see most of us are either applying this year, next year, and a few have some years to go. And it seems like all of us are either in undergrad or out of school. So that's very good to know. Okay, so the first thing, and I included this when I saw that not everyone who applied is necessarily in the US, but just, and not everyone is looking towards PhD, some people are looking towards masters. So this is just to highlight the differences between a PhD and a master. So the first thing is that there's so many schools in the US. Like, you know, it's not really like, I know Zambia where I'm from, it's like there's two big universities and it's like, yeah, like everyone knows, apply to those two. But the US has so many, so many. And I know it's easy to fall down the trap of like, oh yes, I know the Ivies. And of course they are good, but like you do yourself a disservice by not really looking at as many as you can. So the point is there are so many, like, yeah, so many schools. So the differences between a PhD and a master's, there are many differences. PhDs are traditionally more research-based, but there's also a thesis master's degree, which is more research-based if that's what you're interested in. Then the biggest things is masters are more general. So for a master's degree, you're kind of trying to see, like, so I'm chemistry. If I'm doing a master's in chemistry, it's not really going to be specialized in one field of chemistry, it would be more general. But if I'm doing a PhD, to be inorganic or like some specific technique. So it's very specific for a PhD. A master's is normally 2 years, while a PhD is normally 5 years. And then masters are not usually funded. And I saw many people brought this up in the form beforehand. I will address that as we go. But PhDs are almost always fully sponsored. I say almost because there are some that are not. So be sure to look into the fine print. And then when it comes to stipends, for masters, it's rarely provided, while PhD is usually provided. And it's the same for insurance. So basically, PhDs are usually more fully funded. And this is because of how they're set up. So basically, as a PhD student, you're working for the university, like you're teaching, you're giving a high output of research. So they are more likely to pay you for that work. Or as compared to a master's where I'm mostly taking classes. And then if it's thesis-based, those are more likely to be funded as well because of the research. So you're giving something and they're giving you something back, basically, as you go. And like I said, if you have a question as we go, feel free to put it in the chat. Yes, and I will address it. Okay, so when it comes to actually finding the schools that you're going to apply for, I think there's 3 big steps, which is you have to know what program. Yes, so there are many people who, I think it's difficult if you don't really have like a general idea of what you want to study. Like imagine I don't even know if it's chemistry or physics or, I don't even know if it's a master's or a PhD. So these are very different. So my advice is first do some source searching, and we'll look at that as well as we go. But first do some source searching and decide like, okay, I want to do this and I want to do research that is kind of like this. And something that can guide you in that is your main career goal. So where do you want to go in the end? Do you want to be a professor? Then most likely PhD. Do you want to work in industry? Most likely master. So things like that, like use your end goal to kind of guide your steps. And that will help you because you already have like decision fatigue when it comes to schools. So it really helps to know the specific field that you want to be in, what your end goal is, and that will guide the program that you go for. So after making that decision, it makes it easier to search for schools because you kind of know what you want as you search. And then the next thing will be preparations and applying. Okay, so there are going to be different components of the application process. And there are many different ones that are not on this list. These are the more general ones that I feel like need specific tips. Like I said, this is not an extensive list. I'm not an expert, but I feel like these are really big things. So I'm going to talk about making your school list. So what do you need to do to get to that point where you're comfortable with the schools that you're applying to? We'll talk about application fees because that's a big one. It might hinder your application in some way. Then we'll talk about results or transcripts a little bit, and then we'll talk about recommendation letters, which are really big as well, and essays. So I want to preface all of this by saying through my application process, I got to talk to a lot of admissions counselors. And the thing that I would tell you is that schools are so different. Even the way they look at applications is so different. So never take anything that you learn and be like, yes, every school is like this, because it's not as standard as undergrad. It's so, so different. Like even within the school, different programs can have a totally different process. So while some rules are like, you can take it for everything, just keep in mind that this is not as standard as undergrad. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the timeline. This is mostly, I guess, for people who are not applying this year, because it kind of includes like the beginning of this year, but maybe you're already on the timeline, or maybe to bring out some things that that you should try to handle as soon as possible. But this was my timeline. So this is not like applies to all. It's just what worked for me. So for the spring, which is from January through May, I think it's good to have your final list. That's the biggest thing, right? And we'll talk about that in detail. But like I said, you have to find out what your fit is. So what kind of program are you looking for? And that will help you as you look into many schools and you're trying to see which ones have what you need. And then you make your final list of schools. So I recommend that at least by the spring, you already know the schools that you're applying to, because you have to do a lot of specific searching, which will come later on in the timeline. But it's good to already know in advance, if you can, know which schools that you're interested in. And then the other thing to do really early on in the year is to ask your recommenders, right? So these are people who are professionals. They probably have, I don't know, 6 other people who are going to ask them for recommendations, first of all. And then it's never obvious, right? Some professors will think you're going to ask them. Maybe you're not even thinking about them. So never assume, oh, they know I'll ask them like in October. No, ask them as early as possible and involve them early on in the process. And another thing is having advisors, right? So have people who have either gone through the application before or people who are also applying this year. That would be really helpful. I know I had like 2 people who used to review our essays, right? So even though professors may be busy and they're not responding, I have a friend who I can be like, oh, this is my essay. And they'll also send me, and we're growing, we're going back and forth, we're growing, we're giving each other feedback. And that was extremely, extremely helpful. So that's something that if you can do early on, like, have people who you've already told, like, I'm applying this year. Can I reach out to you when I have questions? Can I, and that will really be helpful in the process. Then when it comes to the summer, which is right now, so like June through August, it's important to do your preparations. Like this really saved me. And honestly, when I was doing it, I wasn't really like conscious of it. But the fall semester, especially if you're a senior right now, is going to be very busy. Especially if you're doing a class that requires you to do like a research project, like a thesis or what, and you're taking your most advanced classes. So the best thing you can do for yourself is be ready now, as ready as you can be, right? So this is document requirements. Some schools are going to require your CV, just other things that you need to personally prepare. So be sure to have those on hand. Like I started a folder in my Google Drive, that was just like PhD applications. And I used to make sure I'm just like gathering everything that I need. And that helped me see what I don't have. And the other thing is to draft and to review your essays. Reviews are so important. Like if I was to read to you the first essay I ever wrote, it was so bad. And in my head, I thought it was good. Like the more I got feedback, I got to see like, what was I doing? Like, so it's really important to get as much feedback as you can. And during the summer is when you have more time to do that. And the people you're asking also have more time to do that typically. So you want to make sure you're getting feedback as much as you can. And like I said, part of preparing your documents is perfecting your CV as well. And another thing is to pursue fee waivers. We'll talk about that a little later. But applications are expensive. Like, I don't know if you guys know. Does anyone know typically how much it costs to apply to one school? If anyone wants to type in the chat, like, what do you think it would cost to submit your application to one school for either your master's or your PhD? 95? Yes, some are 95. 100, yes. 80 to 120, yes. 50, I don't think so. So it's really expensive. I remember from the schools that I applied to, the lowest was about 70 or so. And then the highest was like 155. And another thing is sometimes there's a separate fee for international students, right? So they'll say, oh, 120, and then they'll be like 155 for international students, right? And that's something that I did beforehand. So before even, as I was looking into schools, I was also writing down the application fee so that I'm aware, like, okay, this is like almost $200. I need to find a way to get out of paying this fee. So pursuing fee waivers during the summer would be really beneficial as well. It's very expensive. Okay. And then when it comes to the fall, this is when you're going to be submitting. So most deadlines fall between November and December. I remember for me, most of my applications were due November 1st, unfortunately. Like that's like 2 months into the semester, barely 2 months into the semester when I should have already submitted everything. So the fall really is not your friend. Like you want to make sure you are as ready as you can be beforehand. Another thing to do is to invite your recommenders. I'll talk a little bit more about that when you talk about recommendations. But you also want to submit your applications, of course, because if you don't submit, if you don't apply, you're automatically not accepted. And then you have to patiently wait, which is also a big thing. Like I said, it's not standard in any way, but I'll talk more about that as we go. So this is my recommended timeline. Like I said, things are different for everyone. But I think the biggest things are ask your recommenders in advance and prepare your materials as early as you can. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about making your final list. So there's a link. I also, disclaimer, there will be many QR codes in this presentation because I like QR codes. But yes, I'm also going to be putting the links in the chat. So I put a link in the chat, and this is a playlist. So maybe you can like save it somewhere, message it to yourself. But this is a YouTube series that I did where I go in depth into the 3 steps of making your final list. So I will go over it like kind of over the surface right now for the sake of time. But if you want more detail, I really like take time to explain each step in those. It's a 3-part series based on these 3 parts. Yes, but the biggest thing, which I already said, is you have to know what your fit looks like. You have to know the program that you're interested in, or even generally the kind of research that you want to do, because you can't really look into schools if you don't know what you're looking for, right? So what do you need in a program? So after knowing, okay, I need to do a master's in, I don't know, a master's in programming or something, right? Then the next thing is, what do you need? So if funding is a big thing for you, so what I did was, which I share in the series, is I started a spreadsheet where I wrote down like this is what I want in a program. These are my non-negotiables. Because what's the use of applying to a school, which is great on paper, but it doesn't have what you need, right? So you have to know beforehand, do they have funding? If funding is a big thing for me, if you want something very specific, like for me, this is very specific to me, but I wanted a school which has a combined chemistry and chemical engineering division because I also have an interest in engineering. So it's like small things like that. Like, what's your end goal? If you want to go into industry, maybe I want a school that has partnerships with industry, and not every school has that, right? So you want to make sure that you're really looking in depth into every single part. So first of all, you sit down and write down like these are the things that I need in a program. Then after that, you can quantify them into searchable qualities. So one of the biggest things for a PhD is you are basically applying to a lab, right? Even if I go to a school that's amazing and I want to do, I don't know, like I want to do mass spectrometry, it's about me joining a lab that does that. I'm not just joining and like, free fall on my own, like I pick a project. I'm joining a lab, right? So one of the biggest things is if I want to make sure I have a professor at that school who does what I want to do, right? One of the ways to quantify it is say, okay, maybe I want 3 professors in this field, right? Because it's not guaranteed that you join any one lab. Something can happen. Maybe someone retires, someone transfers. Nothing is stable. So you want to make sure that you quantify those things. And I go in depth in the videos. I hope that you have the time to watch them. But yes, so you quantify those things because then as you look into a school, you have solid things that you're looking at. Like, okay, do they have 3? No, they don't. Is it worth applying? Probably not, right? And then you make a checklist, and like I said, as you're going through, you're looking at that. And I'm saying this because I know through the process, it's easy to kind of get attached to a school. Like some of us have this dream school. Like, for example, this is just an example. I really wanted to apply to Harvard because I know, the research is great and it's a great school on paper. But when I tell you there was not even one professor doing what I want to do, like that was an automatic no for me. So what I'm saying is don't get attached to the idea of a school if they don't have what you need, because in the end, you are the one who's going to get what you get out of that project. So take the time to figure out and be very, in this particular stage, it's very important to be subjective. You don't want to put your emotions and be like, oh, I've always wanted since I was a child. Because what's the point of applying if it doesn't have what you need, right? So after doing that, after figuring out like, this is what I need in a school, then you can search into schools. And this is also really important. Like I said, there's over 4,000 schools in the US. Your job is to look into as many schools as you can and remove biases, right? There are some schools that I didn't even think would be like on my list, but when I looked into them, I'm like, wow, like this is actually a really good school. And also ranking is not everything. Some schools are amazing, 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 but they're just not high up on the rankings. And there are many things that affect that. Maybe they just don't give their data out as easily as other schools do. Maybe they're not in the news as much as other schools are. So look into as many schools as you can. And there's many ways to do that. You can use, so one of the things that I used was best grad schools, US news and rankings, and not necessarily to see like who's number 1, but to see like if a school is on the list for chemistry, they probably have some good aspects of chemistry. And one thing that you can also do is you can filter it based on the specific field. So I'm chemistry, I want to do inorganic chemistry. I can search for the schools that are known for inorganic chemistry. And there's a reason that they are known for that. Either they have good professors, they have a lot of resources and things like that. So that's something that can help. Not, like I said, not to see which one is number one, but just to be aware of schools that are good in specific fields. Another way is to connect with people. So people who are either in that field, like which schools do they go to? If not, like if they don't go to a school which is amazing, they probably know schools that are amazing. So talk to people, ask them, I want to study this, which school do you recommend? That's mostly how I got to hear about schools that I even ended up applying to in the end. Is I asked people, what do you think? Because people know, like if I've been in this field, especially as a professor, I know which schools are responsible for the big findings, like so make sure that you are looking into as many schools as you can and then figure out which schools have your non-negotiables. And like I said, don't get too attached to the idea of a school. It's not worth it if it doesn't have what you need. Like just point blank, it's not worth it if it doesn't have what you need. And then see who made the cut. Then what comes after that is making your final list of schools. So if you ask 17 people, how many schools should I apply to? You probably get 17 different answers because it's not set in stone. In fact, let's do a survey right now. How many schools do you guys, like how many schools are you planning on applying to? Just, or maybe if you don't have an idea, maybe you have a range. Like if you were to just pick a random number, like how many schools would you be comfortable applying to? What number would that be? And you can type it in the chat. I see 10, 7 to 10. I see 5, 15 to 20, 8 to 10. So you've already seen 10. In our sample size, 20. In our sample size, there's already like a huge difference in the number of schools that people are applying to. So the first thing I will tell you is don't listen to any one person, right? Because people have their own opinions for different reasons. It has to be your decision. So the biggest thing is how many schools are you comfortable applying to? That's not something that like I said, people have different opinions. It's not really like set in stone. I won't tell you like, oh yes, apply to this number of schools because I don't have the right to do that. So it's up to you to sit down and say like, how many am I comfortable with? And there's other things that will affect your decision as well, like maybe the application fees. Because imagine you want to apply to like 10 schools, each school is like $100. That's already 1,000. And maybe that's like a hindrance. Maybe you didn't manage to get fee waivers and stuff. But the biggest thing is you just have to sit down and decide, I'm going to apply to this number of schools and stick with it. And that will help you to pick well. And that's really important because you're going to make a balanced list, right? So it's important to apply to dream schools, which are like really highly ranked. Then there's target schools, which are kind of like in the middle, and safeties. So there's many ways that people rank schools. What I did to rank schools is I used the acceptance rates. And I explained this more in the series, in the YouTube series. But basically I said, how many out of those who apply, how many are accepted? Because that's how hard it is to get in, right? Some schools have a really small department like Caltech, right? They have a really, really small like grad school. So because so many people are applying, it's automatically harder to get in. And it's not necessarily because it's a good school. It's just because of, how things are taken, how many people apply. So one thing I did was I said, if the acceptance rate is above 50%, that's a safety school. So meaning half the people who apply get accepted, that's a safety school. Then if I say a target school is like between 50 and like 25, right? That's like a target because it's like, it's a good chance of getting in. If it's below 25, it's a dream school. So that was what I used to figure out like, is it a dream school, is it a target school, a safety school? Like literally, how easy is it to get into the school? And you want to make sure that you are balancing this list. The biggest thing is that nothing is guaranteed. Like it's not that, oh, if this school is easy to get in, I'll get in. Like grad school admissions, like I said, are not standard in any way. There are so many schools I thought I would get into that I was rejected from. So never be like, oh yes, I'll definitely get into this school. The best thing you can do for yourself is just be balanced, be well-rounded as you come up with that list. Look into as many schools as you can, and then make your final decision. And like I said, I go in depth into the series, so yes. Okay, then we'll talk a little bit about funding because I know that's a very big thing. It's a non-negotiable for many of us. So when it comes to funding, it's set in stone and it's not even arguable that PhD programs have more funding than master's programs. That's just how it is. And like I said in the beginning, it's because of, as a PhD student, you are literally working for the school. So they are more likely to pay for your education, right? So usually it comes with a teaching or a research assistantship, and you have to do that for the school to pay your tuition. So basically your pay is the tuition then normally it will come with a stipend and it will come with insurance. Please look into the fine print. Like look into it because there are so many schools. I'll give an example of like schools in California. I think they tend to give you out of state tuition. So they'll be like, oh, we'll pay your tuition, but maybe they're not paying out of state tuition. And in your head, they're like, oh yes, it's paid for, but it's not. So really look in depth into the fine print, like see for international students, how does the funding go? And just really look in depth into everything. Some of them have like student fees that can't legally be paid for by your stipend, and you still have to cover those things. So really look in depth. But most schools or programs will cover that based on you teaching or doing research. And this also applies to some master's programs that are more research based. So I remember looking into Cornell specifically. I know that they have funding for master's students as well who are in the research. So same thing, you would be doing teaching assistantships and they'll be paying for your tuition. So that's like mostly the standard way that programs are funded. But, oh, sorry, I went back. Okay, another way is through sponsorships that are external, right? So for those who are citizens of the US, there are many options. The biggest one is the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program, but international students don't qualify for that. So in terms of, for us, finding funding outside, especially for a master's program, the organizations that will, sponsor you for schools that, as long as the school is in the US, or if it's in multiple countries. Then there's the Rhodes Scholarship, which is specifically for Oxford. Then there's the AAW Fellowship, which is specifically for women. So this is something that you have to do research into and look into what the requirements are. And it's definitely worth applying to, it's fully sponsored. Then another way is through fellowships. So this is more supplemental. And one thing that I have, so I will share this presentation with everyone in the end, and I will share my website at the end. But on my website, I linked the UCLA Fellowship Database. I think even if you search on Google, UCLA Fellowship Database, it's going to pop up. But basically, you can filter it based on whether you're a citizen or not. And that's the biggest thing that I love, is you're not just like scrolling through. You can literally filter to see if you qualify and to give you a list based on that. And then there are some fellowships that are conferred upon admission. So for some of the schools that I applied to, I was given a fellowship after being accepted. And it's based on different things. Obviously, you're not involved in the process, you don't apply for it. But some of them are for minorities, some of them are for specific programs. And if you qualify, they give it to you. But that's more supplemental. So normally how it works is if you have a fellowship, you won't have to teach because basically the fellowship is paying your tuition, not the school. And then other times, some schools just have compulsory teaching. So that's something else to look into. If maybe you don't want to teach, look into whether getting a fellowship would help you get out of that. Fee waivers. Like I said, this is a very big part because it's expensive. We already saw like some schools are literally almost $200 to apply to. So how do you get a fee waiver? There's many ways to do this. The first way is through the school website. So some schools will automatically, well, not automatically, they will give you the provision to apply for a waiver. Watch out because some schools don't give waivers to international students, but the best thing is they will put it there on the website. Like they will tell you already upfront and say, we don't give international students, right? So you can check for the school. Some of them will tell you if you qualify or not. And sometimes you have to have certain qualifications to apply. Mostly if it's a financial burden, you can apply for the waiver. Another way to get waivers is through bridge or visit programs. I don't know if you've heard of them before, but these are amazing because they not only give you waivers, they also help you with the application. So I have linked a post up there. I was able to visit 2 of the schools that I applied to, 3 actually, and all of them came with fee waivers. So this is just a LinkedIn post where I shared my experience and stuff. But there are so many schools, like even those that I'm not aware of. So be sure that as you decide which schools that you're applying to, you also check their website if they have some kind of bridge program where they help you with the application because they'll most likely come with a fee waiver. Another way to get a fee waiver is to email graduate admissions, right? So just send an email, explain your situation, tell them I'm an international student if you are and you don't qualify. Tell them I'm an international student and this is what's happening. I don't qualify for this. What do you advise? Is there any way that you can help me? And most likely they want you to apply. So most likely they will find a way to get you a waiver. And another way I forgot to mention when you're looking at school program websites is some of them will give you a waiver based on you being in a certain organization. So not only financially, but like, for example, I got a waiver because I was in NSBE. That's the National Society of Black Engineers. So I found that, I was able to get that waiver. And by the way, I also have a video on waivers on my YouTube channel where I explain all of this in detail. But basically, sometimes just because of certain memberships, you get waivers, which is great. So sometimes, you have to be smart. If it's worth becoming a member just for the waiver, yeah. Okay, I didn't tell you anything. Yes. So the next thing is recommendations. And so we'll have a Q&A session after this. I know it's a lot of information, but yes, recommendations are really, really important. One of the things that people used to tell me is you have no control over a recommendation. That is not true. There are so many ways that you can make sure that your recommendation is amazing. Like some things are on you. You can't just sit down and say, oh, if the professor writes a good letter, I'm good. No. Like this is literally a big part of your application. So I always share with people that so I did a summer internship at University of California, Davis. And we sat down with literally the admissions committee and they were answering our questions. So I remember someone had asked, like, okay, imagine you have two applicants and they're both amazing. Like they have research experience, their essays are good. What would you use as the tiebreaker between the two? And they told us recommendations. So they play a bigger role than you think. Like they are really, really important. They can be a make or break in your application. So it's really important to do your best to have good recommendations. And this is something that, or these are some things that really helped me. Or I never read my letters, so I don't know. But obviously they were good because they worked. Okay, so the biggest thing is you have to choose your recommenders very carefully, right? So you have at least three recommenders. So you have to decide who they are. That's completely up to you. And you ask them very early. Most schools will require three. So I think it's just good on paper to have three. Maybe some might need two, but having three is just like the safe option. I've never heard of any that will need more than three. And it's really up to you to decide. I won't say much on this one, but keep in mind the kind of program that you're applying to. If you're applying for a PhD program, they want to know that you're a good research student. So obviously having a recommendation from someone who's seen you in the lab is going to be more valuable, most likely, than someone who's like, who was your teacher in a specific class. So if you're deciding between a teacher and someone who saw you do research, maybe at an internship or something, I think it's worth going for the research. So for me, all three of my recommendations were from research. So from my advisor at my school, who I also work with in the lab. Then the other one was from my mentor at UC Davis, where I did an internship. And my third one was from Notre Dame, where I also did a research internship. So I had three research recommendations, and I know that they were very relevant to the field that I was applying to. So I'm not saying that's not the only way, because maybe you don't have three people who can speak to your research ability, but keep that in mind. So think of like what qualities do I need for this program? If it's something to do with research, even something that like testifies to your problem solving abilities. So maybe you did a job somewhere, and like you had to do that a lot, like think on your feet. That would also be a great recommendation. So think of like, what do I want them to see in me as a student who knows me well enough to write this recommendation? And the next thing is to involve your recommenders in the process. So this is a way to give them like content for the letter, right? You will not be there when they're writing this essay. I think most people would be offended if you go up to them and be like, hey, tell them about this time and tell them about it, like, they know what they're doing, they're teachers. So one way that you can, that you can make sure that you have more time with them is to involve them. So one thing that I did was from the very beginning when I said, oh, I'm thinking of applying to grad school, I talked to all of them individually, even those who are not at my school. I would email them and say, I'm thinking of applying to schools. I need your help finding the list of schools. Or I'm starting to write my essays. What advice do you have? Can you review this essay for me? What about this CV? So in that way, it's like they're seeing me as a person. They are seeing how serious I am. And I'm also getting the benefit because they're also helping me with the process, right? So make sure to involve them in the process because obviously if they said yes, they care. Sometimes you can be like, it can feel like, oh, but aren't I troubling them? Yes, you are troubling them. And they wanted to be troubled. That's why they said yes. So be sure to involve them as much as you can. This is a cheat, like I said, to getting more content into your letter. Then another thing is to provide updates, right? So even as you finalize your materials, or even if something random happens, just be like, hey, so I talked to someone today and they really told me this thing that helped me with my recommendation. I mean, with my essays and stuff like that. Like, just keep them in the loop as much as you can. And then the other thing is to invite them early. So like I said, for me, most of my applications were due November 1st. That is really early. So imagine I am dilly-dallying and I haven't yet submitted my essays because those are big. It was hard for me to submit them because I felt like there's a mistake somewhere. Anyway, so it might take you a while to like finalize your entire application and you don't want to wait until a week before to invite them. That is a mistake. Some people like, you really have to know your recommenders, of course, But like some people will only start working on them when you send them the invite. Like that's going to be what makes them do it. So one thing that I did was like a month or so before the deadline, I opened my recommendations. So one thing, I mean, I opened my applications. One thing that you can do is you can invite them and they can submit even before you submit your application. So way before, like I think it was actually 2 months in advance. When I just opened I opened the application, I filled out my details just up to the recommendation point and I invited them. I made sure I invited them all on the same day so that the emails were close to each other. So I invited all of them and I even sent a follow-up email to say, I've invited you to these schools. I really want you to recommend me. Thank you. So even then, when you send your reminders, you can even space them out. Like, okay, after 3 weeks, you can check in and say, oh, how's the recommendation going? And you're going to know when they submit. And you're going to have some people who just do things last minute. So be sure to be respectful and work with them. Ask them what's the best way to reach you in case like it's the night before. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But in case it's the night before and they still haven't submitted and they don't respond to email, that's not going to work. So ask them what's the best way to reach you. I had to talk to some of my recommenders via text because they don't check their emails. Some of them I had to download an app like Slack so that I can reach them because that's the only place they check. So be sure to work with them. You don't want to be disrespectful, but you also you don't want yourself to be affected just because they didn't do something. So it's really up to you to be on top of things. Okay, that was a mouthful. But yes, so now we're going to have some questions. So I've talked about fee waivers, making your school list, and recommendations. So are there any specific questions to do with those things? Like I said, we'll talk about essays after this half point break. And you can type your question in the chat if you have any, or you can speak out if you feel comfortable doing that. Okay. I'm going through. So I know some people submitted their questions beforehand. Oh, yes, you can go ahead, Faith.
You mentioned that you reached out to the PI of the second internship. That's the one at UC. So that's like a summer internship for maybe 10 weeks, and then you probably applied 2 years later. So like, how effective? I know it was effective for you, but what do you think they were able to write about? I still keep in touch with the first PI I had, but I mean the second one right now. So I was thinking when I was going to apply, he probably wouldn't know so much. Like,
I see.
maybe he has probably lost much account about me by that time. So do you still think it's like, what do we do to, I don't know if you get what I'm asking.
Oh, yes, that's a great point. So that's true. So I did that internship in 2023, and I applied in 2025. So that was a long time. So one thing I did was, I mean, before I even knew I was applying to grad school, I just kept in touch. I just wanted to keep in touch. So we would have meetings every so often, and like, stuff like that. But the biggest thing is like maybe years have already gone by and you haven't spoken to them. It's never too late. So even like I said, involving them in the process, they haven't forgotten. I mean, hopefully they haven't forgotten what impact that you had. And the biggest thing is so for those, like, so how the internship worked for me is I wasn't working directly with the PI. I worked with someone else. And most likely that's how it was for most of us. And what they'll do is they'll reach out to that person and say, okay, like, let me know what I can write in the letter. And that person is less likely to forget the things that you did as a person. So yeah, I think the best way is like, if you haven't spoken to them in a while, now is the time. Just be like, hey, can we have a meeting? I just want to update you. Or, oh, I wanted to ask your advice on something. And like update them on your life and everything that's happening. And like, I think that's the best thing you can do is just like involve them as much as you can. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what helped me, just involving them. And I know for a fact that they did ask the person I was working directly with at the time to help with the letter. So, yeah. Okay. Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, definitely connect with each other outside of this. That's also one of the goals of this meeting. And time is going by so fast. Okay, so I'm going through. I think I've kind of answered most of the questions, but we'll have a question session at the end. So I'm going to move on to the next part just for the sake of time. And yes, the recording will be shared. I will email the recording. Yes. Okay. Essays are a huge part of your application. They will literally make or break your application. So out of the admissions officers I spoke to, one of the things they said was that essays get points, like, so when they are ranking your application, they kind of have like a ranking system. Your essays will be ranked on their strength, like from 1 to 4 or something like that. And different people have to rank it. And that is directly going to affect whether you get into the program or not. So please do not take your essays for granted. Like, they will literally make or break your application. And I see the question in the chat. I will address it towards the end. But yes, just for the sake of time. So there's 2 main essays. Some other schools will have an additional essay, and I will share the link you see on the screen. I made a cheat sheet that breaks down more in detail what to put in your personal statement versus your statement of purpose and other things that can help you. And this is on my website. If you just scroll down on that page, you will find this resource. Okay, so the statement of purpose and the personal statement are very different. You will find a whole bunch of advice on how to tailor each one. So this is just what worked for me. Like I said, don't take it as gospel truth. Do your research and decide what approach that you want to take. But your statement of purpose is more based on your research promise, especially if you're applying for a PhD. So you have to express your interest in research. You have to tell them the things that you've done, of course, to get there. And you have to give them solid plans of the things that you want to do when you get there. So it's literally a statement of your purpose. Why are you applying to this program? Like, it's very objective, very technical. Yes, your personal statement is kind of different. It's going to be more focused on you as a person. How have you grown? What are your specific career goals? So it's less focused on the things that you did and more focused on how they affected you as a person. And specifically, when it comes to writing your essays, like I said, there's going to be different prompts. Those are not the only ones that you find. But these are some things that really helped me when I was writing my essay. First thing is be cohesive. It's so easy to be like, especially for the statement of purpose, it's easy to be like, I have this skill, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I have this skill, 7, 8, 9, 10. And like, yes, and I also did this, and I also did this. But like, you're telling a story. You want to make sure that your people who are reading are getting one story out of your essay, right? And one way you can do that is connect everything. So don't just be like, paragraph 1, internship, paragraph 2, internship. Like, take them through, okay, I've always been interested in this, so I did this. This taught me how to do this, and then I did. So, you're telling them a story of a flow of events. And that will most likely, like, they'll get what you're telling them to get out of the essay. Next thing is, who is the customer? So put yourself in the shoes of the readers. And the first thing that's important is that not everyone who reads your essay is going to be in the field that you're in. The admissions committee for most schools is broad. Like, they have one grad admissions committee, right? So at the point that you are either being taken or not, it's very broad. So you're saying, I know the GRFP, TCD, and sales and DS, like, you focusing on the technical side is only going to speak to one group of people. So that's why I said it's important to take them through what you learned, how you grew as a person, even as you tell those things. Of course, the focus is the technical side for the personal, for the statement of purpose. But you have to make sure that even if someone doesn't know the field that you're in, they can get what you're trying to put down. And also, if someone is a specialist, they can also see like, okay, I get what you're trying to say. Next thing is customize your essay. The worst thing you can do is submit the same essay to all the schools. That is not going to work at all. These schools want to make sure that you are passionate about the specific school that you're applying to. And we'll go into that in depth in the next slides. But one thing that really helped me is to personalize your essay based on the mission of the school. So one thing about your personal statement is that you are telling them what your goal for the program is. But the biggest thing is not every school is interested in the same thing. I always give this example because I think it's very relevant. So if you go to a school like Harvard, their main emphasis is we want you to go out and impact the world. Like, we want you to start this hospital in the middle of nowhere and reach the lives of all these people. That's going to be their big thing. If you go to a school like MIT, it's going to be more like, we want to equip you as a person. We want to do this for you. And yes. So if you're going to tell a story to Harvard, you saying, oh yes, I really want to go back to my home country and I want to start this thing, is going to be more beneficial than you saying, I want to gain this skill and become, you get what I'm saying? Like, it's important to put it in the frame of what they want, because that's how they see if you're fit for the school, because everything that they do is tailored to their mission. So one thing that I did was I had a document that just explained all the missions of all the schools I was applying to. And I would look at that when I'm personalizing the essay. So I had specific points in the essay that I knew, like, okay, the last 3 paragraphs are personalized. And when I'm doing that, I'm reading the mission and I'm reading what the program is about, because that's how they see if you're a fit for the program. And I see the questions in the chat, I will get to them. Okay. Then the next thing is, so I see a question about the mission. So it's going to be on their website. So if you look up, you just have to search like, I don't know why my brain is blanking on names of schools. Anyway, someone put Florida in the chat. So University of Florida, you just type in University of Florida mission, it's going to pop up. So it's pretty easy to find. And if you want to find the mission of the program, just look up the program. That's going to be probably the first page. They'll tell you this is a program that's meant to do this and this and this. And that's what should guide you as you personalize your essays. Next thing is, don't eliminate yourself. So many things, so many admissions committee have said, if there's one typo, that's enough to eliminate you. And it's not that they're being called, it's just that they have so many people, thousands applying from all over the world. So you having an error in your essay shows that you're not serious. And like, what if you take that unseriousness to the program? It's basically an easy way for them to remove you from the list. So literally, that could get you kicked off, right? So it's very serious. Don't eliminate yourself. So proofread all your essays. The other worst thing you can do is like send the wrong essay to the wrong school. That, I think that's also an automatic disqualification, because it just shows that you're not serious. So one thing you can use is Grammarly, and like, AI has, grown so much now. I'm not saying write your essay using AI. I'm saying you can use it to detect errors, and also have other people read it, because maybe when you read it, you become biased to the errors and you're not really seeing them anymore. Or maybe there's a better way to say something. So that's why it's important to have your drafts very early, so that you have the time to get as much feedback as you can get. Okay, statement of purpose. So the biggest thing about the statement of purpose is that you, like I said, you're trying to give them a picture of you as a researcher. So one thing I did was, like I said, you're trying to tell a story. So what I did was, in the first, like maybe the first two or the first paragraph, I would say, why that field, right? Because I'm telling a story about my research. So first of all, why am I interested in this field? Like, what's the thing that got me hooked in this field? And that's also a great introduction that can like attract your readers and keep them interested in your essay. Like I said, you're speaking to people, right? So yes, so why that field? And then talk about if you've done any research, like what did you start from? If maybe, so for me, I applied to a research like field that's completely different from what I did in undergrad. So I had to start from, okay, this is what I did. This is how this kind of like got me to this. So I'm starting from, where was I maybe freshman year, Did I do anything? Maybe it's a specific class I did that made me think of this. So you're taking them through who you are as a researcher. Next thing is your growth. So like Kai said, so you're taking them from why did you pursue this thing, and then to what have you actually done. And that's really, really important, because that's how you show them, you're not going to say, I'm determined, I am focused. Like, you showing what you've done is a great way for them to already get that from the things that you've done. And it can go from, I did this research, I went over what was required of me, to, oh, I was doing this job, or maybe I was a tutor and I went beyond what was asked of me and I made this material. It's up to you to bring out literally what has inspired you to apply to that school. So what skills do you bring? And this is not going to be like, oh, if she's done mass spectrometry, yes. No, it's not going to be anything like that. The biggest thing that they emphasized, the people I spoke to, was that they just want experience, period. Like, that's going to bring a lot to your application. So it's not that, oh, you've done this in this field. They just want to make sure that you are doing something and you have some form of experience. And like I said, it doesn't have to be lab experience. You can get skills from so many other places. And then why graduate school in general? So why do you want to go to graduate school? What specific role would that play in your career? And then the future. So now this is going to be specific to the school. So why have you chosen that school? And who do you want to work with? This is really important, because they will not accept you if they feel like they can't give you what you need. So you have to show them like, yes, I have seen this professor and I want to work with them in this thing that they do, right? And there are many ways to do that. It's not going to be standard or gospel truth. One thing that I'll be doing on my channel in some time is I'll be reading my essays. Yes, that worked. So yes, I will show you the specific approach that I use. But the biggest thing is it's not standard. Many people use different approaches and they've gotten accepted. So it's really different. But the biggest thing is you want to make sure that you're showing them that, yes, this is an informed decision. I chose this school. Sorry. Yes, this is an informed decision. Like, I chose this school and this is how they fit. And who do you want to work with? And of course, what is the end product? And this is where the mission of the school comes in, as you talk about why, like, how does this play into the big picture of your life? And I feel like that's a very cohesive story, because you're talking about why this field, why you started what you've done, and what you want to do. Personal statement. So the biggest thing about the personal statement is the way the prompt looks sometimes, it seems like they're asking you about some random thing, like, oh, like you can talk about, I don't know, how you grew up in this country and this and this and this. But the biggest thing about the personal statement that I learned is that you are still bringing out who you are as a researcher. So you're not just saying, I have faced so many difficulties in my life and I have overcome. And yes, which is important. Tell that story, yes. But still, how does that benefit you as a researcher? This is still related to the program. So while it's personal, you are trying to bring out how your person has grown. So while in the statement of purpose, you're trying to be more technical. Yes. You're trying to be more technical in the personal statement. For this one, it's the same goal, but now you're talking more from your perspective as a person. So the first thing is, well, something that I did was to start from, so for the statement of purpose, it's why the research. For this one, it's kind of like, why that career? Like, what got you interested in that career? And anecdotes are very good for this one. Like I said, I'll be reading my essays on my channel soon. Yes. And then why the undergrad or master's program or the school? Like, why did you choose your undergrad school? So basically, as a person, how has your development been? And then going to growth. So what experiences were very impactful in your undergrad or in your internships or other things like that? And how did they make you grow as a person? So for me, I chose to still talk about my research in my personal statement, but I was focusing more on, oh, the first day I got to the lab, I felt like this, but this happened and I grew and I learned. And then I took more time to talk about the other things that I did outside of the lab. I was a tutor, I did this and this and this. I was in this organization, I started this. But essentially, I'm focusing on the skills that I learned that will help me be a good candidate for their program. And the other thing now is the future. So instead of focusing on, like, I want to work with this professor, now it's going to be, what else in the school are you interested in? Is there some organization that is tailored to the goals that you have, And then for your end career goals, it can now be more like broad because you're talking about yourself as a person and maybe the thing that you've always been passionate about. So essentially, it's the same thing, but it's packaged very differently. But you're trying to show them, like, this is who I am as a researcher. And that's really, really, I can't emphasize that enough. That's really, really important as you go. And the other thing about the personal statement is, so I had mentioned about fellowships, that some of them automatically consider you upon admission. Well, they use a personal statement to do that. So if you have gone through difficulties, it's the best place to mention them. Like I said, don't write a whole essay about how you had financial struggles. That's not going to benefit you. But you want to be smart, like smartly mention those things as you go through your essay so that they know, like, okay, yeah, this person, is from a marginalized group of people. So I was sure to mention, as a Black woman in STEM, just one paragraph as a Black woman in STEM, and just that would qualify me for specific fellowships. So be very smart in how you mention things. Like I said, don't make it all about, don't throw a pity party in the whole essay and just be like, oh yes, and then this happened, and then this happened. You're still trying to show how you are resilient as a person and what makes you a good fit for their program. And then the next thing I want to talk about is be patient. The biggest thing about like admissions to grad school, like I said, is it's not standard. You can ask your friends like, oh yes, have you been accepted? Have you not? Did you get rejected? Or you can go online down this rabbit hole and be like, who's gotten into this school? There are some like websites like Grad Cafe, we've heard of it. But like there are so many places that people will be like, oh yes, if you didn't get accepted by this day, this is happening. Like no one knows the process. Not even the people at the school know the process. Sometimes it changes for that specific year. So there's not going to be statistics that will apply to everyone. There's not going to be a timeline for the response. There's no order whatsoever. Some people get accepted in December, some get rejected in April. Like there's not going to be anything like that. And I remember how it felt. It was just like nerve-wracking because I'm like, I just want to know. Like I just want to know. So just be patient. Don't let other people dampen what as you wait, nothing is in stone. And if you haven't heard back, it doesn't mean you're rejected yet. Like just be patient and wait. Because everyone's story is very, very different. And that's just how it is for grad school. Okay, so I started a group on LinkedIn, and this is a support group. Someone was already sharing like, oh, anyone applying to Florida. So this is going to be a group, and I'll share it in the chat. This is going to be a group that's just like open space for us because everyone on this course is considering, grad school. So if you have a question, it's the best place to ask. If you have a resource that you want to share, that would be a great way to share. So it's just a way to surround ourselves with like individuals And I'll also be sharing as I make more videos and hearing back from you guys, because obviously the point of a YouTube channel is to make videos that people are interested in. So yes, to have like that direct community amongst ourselves, I think that would be very beneficial. I would have loved to have that when I was applying. Then, like I said, I will be sharing this recording via email. So if you got my reminder emails, you're already on the email list. But if not, you can scan this QR code and I will put the link in the chat as well. It will just ask for your name and your email, and that will make sure that I have it as I send the material. So I'll be sending all of these materials plus the recording and the slides as well, in case maybe you missed something or you want to double check. Okay. So that's the end of the presentation. I have shared my LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you guys. I'll type it in the chat as well. And also my YouTube channel. If you subscribe, you'll be alerted about other videos. And there's a lot that has already been uploaded so far. But yes, thank you so much, like I said, for joining. I love it that you guys are here. So now we have a question and answer session. We have like 30 minutes, so we are good on time. Okay, so I'm going to start with the questions in the chat, and we'll have more questions as we go. Okay, so the first question I see is, did you reach out to the members of the research labs you were applying to for grad school? So this is just me, and I always emphasize that it was my personal decision, but I didn't reach out to anyone when I was applying. I didn't want to reach out. And I had spoken to some professors who had an opinion of like it not being as relevant. So some people preach it as, oh, it's a make or break. They should know your name, but it's like, I'm an example. So what I'm telling you is you don't have to do it. I'm not saying don't do it. If you would love to get to know them and for them to get to know you, definitely do it. But the biggest thing is, it's not that the person you reach out to will be on the admissions committee. Sometimes they are not involved at all. So it's not going to make or break your application. It might provide some benefits, like your essay can be better if you know what the lab specifically does, or if you've gotten to talk to some people and stuff like that, but it's not going to make or break your application. But if you do plan to reach out, it's important to be very personal. So don't just be like, don't send the same blast email to 72 faculty members. They know. So one way to show that I've done research into you as a person is talk about their research. One way to do that is like read a paper that they've written and be like, hey, I read your paper on this. I'm very interested. I'm an undergrad from this school, you know, if you're an undergrad, and I would love to meet with you. Attach your CV or your resume and be like, if you are open, I would love to schedule a meeting. That's it. Like, don't make it too long because they don't have all the time in the world. And be very like, be to the point and be personal if you are going to reach out. Okay, another question is, spoken with some graduate school PIs, and they said you don't need solid plans since you can do rotations during the first year of a graduate school in some cases. So how do you keep while still allowing room for change? For example, if I'm specific about a particular field, couldn't they rule me out since they could conclude that they may not be able to offer what I would like? Okay, that's a very good question. So the biggest thing is, yes, you don't need to have a solid plan. And one thing that I did was like I said, I'll read my essays. Yes. But the biggest thing is that I didn't spend like 3 paragraphs saying I want to study quantum mechanics and I want to do this one theory and study this. No, I didn't do that. Some people do that and it works for them perfectly. I didn't have solid plans. But one thing I did was I said, I know that this professor does this work and I can see myself using that, you know, just being general. So for me, I want to do like carbon dioxide reduction stuff. So I say, okay, this professor is working on electrochemistry and they use this technique and I can see how this technique benefits. So you see, I'm not really saying like, I want to do this because I didn't know either, but I was showing like I can fit into what this lab does because they focus on this. Or I would say, oh, this lab focuses very much on mechanisms of like transport. So I can see, I'm interested in that and I can see myself working in this field and stuff like that. And the biggest thing is you're talking to the PIs, right? And they'll tell you that you don't need solid plans, but they might not be on the committee. The committee is trying to see like, is there a way that we can fit this guy into this program? So like I said, if you are more general, but you show that, yes, there are people doing this and I'm very interested in this. Even that is a great way to show like, yes, I've done my research and I can see myself working in this field. And the biggest thing about that is they will not hold you to it. So as the PI said, there are rotations. You can even join like a biology lab. Like, I mean, I'm not saying skip fields or something, but the point is they're not going to walk up to you and be like, Providence, you said this, but you know, we're going to kick out. Like, there's nothing like that. So basically, you just have to show them that I have a plan and I can see this happening, but you can join basically any lab that you want. So it's not like a make or break decision, like, oh, what if I say this and I change my, like, you can change your mind within the same department, and you'll still be fine. But for the admissions part, you have to show them like I can fit in your department. And that's the goal of mentioning professors. Okay, I had already answered how to find the missions. The next question is, what is the most natural way to state the faculty you want to work with? So I think I had already given an example of how I did it, where I just said, like, I'm interested in this field, like carbon dioxide reduction. Then I said, I have seen this professor's work, which is in this field, and I would also want to, like, I can see how this would help me do this in this field and how beneficial this is to this. So you're already talking, your conversation is more like, I can see myself in this school. And then you can name drop. I mentioned 2 professors per essay, but you can name drop and be like, I can see how this person can do this, and I can see how this person can do this. And mentioning 2 professors is also good because if you just mention one and there's only one person working in that field, and then the admissions committee knows like maybe they're retiring next year, they probably won't accept you, not because they don't want you, but because they genuinely will think like, we can't help this person. So be very strategic in how you do things. Okay. Oh, thank you for the good wishes. Yes. Then what advice do you have for people who are in undergrad programs with limited research opportunities? So that's definitely a big thing. So one thing that I will say is experience is not only in the lab. So I've heard stories. I think the biggest thing is just to be proactive. So I've heard stories of people who went to professors and said, I know that you teach this lab. Can I help you do this? Like, maybe can I help you come up with, I don't know, a new lab? Or can I help you, it's more like you're trying to create opportunities for yourself. Because it's just important to show that you can go out on your own and like do specific things. It's really important to show that you are a free thinker, you are a problem solver, and that's one thing that can help you do that. So maybe even in a job that you have, like for me, I was a tutor and I was able to make like review materials. Like I just wanted to do it, but it helped my application. But there are many things that you can do to show that you go above and beyond. But that said, you can also do internships as well. That's a good way to get experience. Or maybe even if there are limited research opportunities, you can just shadow. So it's easy to be like, oh no, I just want someone who's going to pay me and someone who's going to, and maybe, I don't know, maybe the professor doesn't have the bandwidth to employ you. You can just say like, I just want to be there in the lab. Like, I just want to help a little bit. And I had to do that my first year because it was difficult to find research internships. I only found it summer of my freshman year, but even the first semester, I was able to just like shadow in a lab. So just look for opportunities where they are. I think it's important to have some opportunity, no matter how small, just to show that you go above and beyond. So like I said, it doesn't have to be, it can also be in class. You can offer to do something with your professor, stuff like that. Okay, then how about GPA? So GPA, I was told for some schools, it's kind of like on a scale. So it's not really like, oh, if you have a 3.80, you get 7 points. It's kind of like in a range of like scores. Okay, so I'll give an example of the University of Minnesota because they told us how they review. So basically, when they get an application, they sit down and they say, okay, we're going to rank this person's application. So GPA has a number of points, essays have a number of points, recommendations have a number of points. So based on your GPA, it's kind of like a range, like I said, maybe like 3.9 to 4, you get 7 points. Maybe like 3.8, something of that sort. So it's not directly going to be like if your GPA is like 3.5 rejected. It's not anything like that. Because maybe what your GPA kind of lacks, your essays can make up for. Maybe someone didn't have very good essays, but because their points are like very high in this other area, if that makes sense. So it's really a well-rounded application process. And at this point, I assume like your GPA is already in the process, like that's not something that you can change. So one thing that you can do is really, really like go extra, like go hard on those essays, like go hard on your recommendations because it's going to be a full process. I've never heard of a school that's like, I need you to have a 7.2. And on the same like vein, there are some people who get perfect GPAs and still get rejected from amazing universities. So really just be well-rounded and keep in mind that they are not looking at your GPA alone. They're looking at literally every part of your application. Okay. And then what are insights you have regarding leadership roles? So I'm not sure if the question is like, should you include them or should you get them? But it's always a good thing to show. So that's in my personal statement, I did include some leadership roles that I had that were kind of relevant in a way. And of course, I submitted my CV, so they know everything that I did. But I don't think it's like if you are a leader, 17 points. It's just something that could add and show that you are like proactive and you have these very good qualities. So I don't know if that answers the question. If not, let me know. Maybe there's like a specific way that you want it answered. Yes. Then I see a question asking about what the recommender says. As long as they say good things, or there are things you can hint to your recommenders to make their recommendations great. Okay, so that's the thing, is you don't really have direct control over what your recommender says, of course. You can make sure that it's someone who's seen you in the lab, if that's possible. You can make sure it's someone who's seen you solve problems, but you literally can't control what they say. And I think they would take it as an offense if you walk up to them and be like, say this, or don't say, like, yeah, I think that's a no-go area. So the ways that you can hint, I think, are just you being serious about your application. So like you involving them in the process, like I said before, like it's like they already know that, oh, this person is very serious. Like I also need to be serious about their recommendation. Like I don't want to be the reason that they don't get accepted. And then one thing that they always tell us is when you're asking your recommenders, don't just ask them like, write me a letter. Ask them, can you write me a strong letter? I don't know how significant that is, honestly. But I think just like making sure that they know how serious you are, and like them seeing why you want to do it just by having conversations with them about it. I think that's a great way to make their recommendations great. It's like give them the material. Like as they think about you, they should be thinking of how serious you are, how committed you are. And I think that will really go a long way in making their recommendations great. Okay, a publication is a plus if you're applying for a master's. So the biggest thing about publications is they are so rare for people who are applying for programs that they are not anywhere in the rubric. So it's not like if you have a publication, 72 points, like there's nothing like that as far as I know. It's more like it would be a plus. Like I think either way, whether you're applying for a master's or a PhD, it should be a plus, but I don't know to what degree the plus will be, if that makes sense. Like I don't know. I guess it depends on the school and how they do their process, but it can help you, yes. It's not going to make or break your application. Maybe if they're trying to decide between two people, maybe they can be like, oh, publication, maybe we can give this person, stuff like that. But I don't think it's going to be a make or break, but I think it will be a benefit either way. Okay, if someone is graduating in the fall, when do you think is the best time they should apply for grad school? So if you are graduating, like you mean this year, this fall? I assume you mean this fall. The applications are due in the fall. So what I did was I was applying my senior year. So you're basically applying a year before you want to start. So if you are graduating in the fall and you want to start next fall, that's the time to apply. Like this fall is the time to submit your applications because it's a year before you want to start. And there are some schools that have spring admissions, so they start in January, but they are extremely rare, very, very rare. So I also graduated in the fall of last year officially, and I submitted my applications like the semester I was graduating. I submitted everything. Then I'm doing an internship right now, like for the spring, and then I'll be starting in the fall. But it's a year before. So a year before is when you submit all your materials, and yes. Okay. Are there any more questions? Or if you want to get off mute, feel free. So I'll be going through the form while you guys keep any questions. Yes, there were a lot of questions about funding. So I think I had explained how you can, you can look into the schools, like look deep into the fine print and see if they offer sponsorships, even for masters. Sometimes they do that based on teaching, like I said. So look into the schools. And then if not, you can look to external organizations. And I'll share the slides where I listed down some of them, like the Fulbright. But there are many ways that you can get funding. Yes. Okay, looking at, there's something about the course and essays, which I already mentioned. I mentioned about crafting the graduate school list. Okay, so there was a question about amidst all the international havoc, one prospective countries for international scholarships cancel the scholarship abruptly if they have a dispute with one's country. So the biggest thing is I am not an expert at all. Like I'm seeing what's happening in real time as you guys are seeing what's happening. So one thing I can share with you is my religion. So I'm Christian, and I believe that if God has a place saved for you somewhere, he will make a way. If someone had told me last year, like this was going to happen this year, maybe I didn't even have applied. Like this year has been wild. When I tell you some people got scholarships and then they took it back, like literally they gave you the scholarship and then they took it back because maybe it took too long to accept it, or maybe the school just doesn't have the capacity to fund you anymore. Like this year has been crazy, but in the same year that it's been wild, other people are prospering. So what I'm saying is, if God wants you to be in a place, He will make a way for you to be in a place. So your part, especially if you're a Christian, is to seek Him and ask Him what His will is. And if He wants you to be somewhere, He will make a way. That's all I can tell you. Other than that, I don't know any, like, I can't tell you anything about the political landscape. I'm not an expert. I'm just seeing it happen as you guys see it happen. But just know, while things are bad, things are great for other people. So don't take it as it's horrible. My life is over. If it's meant to happen, it will happen. Yes. So are there any other questions or contributions or yes? Okay, I think there's nothing for now. Yes, so I will, in case you missed out the contact form, so I'll be sending, like I said, the recording as well as all the links to the different resources. And the LinkedIn group is a great way to stay in touch with everyone. Oh, sorry, I had missed the question. It says, if your desired master's program requires a year experience in hospital, do you need a work permit and then a visa, or how does that work? So I'm not really sure which program is that, and if you need experience before, like, I don't know if you're in the US right now. I'll assume yes, but if you want to work, so the biggest thing about the F1 visa, the student visa, is that you can only work in your school, like on your campus legally, without needing like external authorization. So if you want to work in a hospital, you will need external authorization. Um, Most people use OPT, so that's what I'm using right now. That's optional practical training, and it's a provision under the F1 visa where you can work outside of campus. So all you would need to do is to get like the position be offered to you and then apply for the optional practical training. It's 3 years. It's 1 year, and then you have STEM, because I see it's like that sounds like STEM. So if you can also extend it for 2 more years. So basically you can work for a year under that authorization and then apply for the program. I don't know if I've answered the question the way it was supposed to be answered, but you would need authorization if you are on the F1 visa, but it's very possible. I'm doing it right now. So yes. Thank you so much. So I'll read this. So just advise. So recommenders, while it's unwise to tell them specifics you expect to be written, I think it's worthwhile to tell them what general elements you would like highlighted, your research and what you did, your skills, what you learned through it, or an academic context, what classes you took with them and your contributions. I think it's most helpful when you have people, when you have people recommending you who know you in different capacities. Definitely, I very much agree with that. I think one way to do that is like to send them your CV or your resume, especially if it's someone that you're not as comfortable with. It's not easy to just be like, I want you to mention this. So if you have such a relationship with your recommender, yes, do it. If you have that direct relationship, I definitely recommend it. But if you're worried about them taking it the wrong way, send them your essays, send them your CV, because that already shows them. Like obviously, you're going to mention them somehow, maybe in your essay, so they can see what how they impacted your life. Or you can just tell them, like, this is why I want you to be my recommender. But I don't think it should be like, say this, because they might take that the wrong way. I see a question about getting in touch with me personally. So I had shared my LinkedIn. I think that's the best way. You can also shoot me an email, which is on my LinkedIn. I will share the link as well. But I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I'm very watchful over my YouTube channel. So if you comment, I will always reply and do something about it. So yes, either LinkedIn, email, and my email is on my channel, but I will put it in the chat as well. I will do my best to respond, and also the LinkedIn group, because I will be, managing the group, and also you can also get help. Like we had some helpful tips from people in the chat as well. So that's a great way to stay in touch with the people on the call. And yes, but thank you so much, everyone. Like I said, this has been great. I appreciate you guys joining the meeting. When I started, I didn't know how big scale it was going to be, but I'm so happy to see like there are people from different states, different countries, and this means a lot. So yes, definitely stay in touch. The group will be there, email will be there, website will be there. And the website is F1 Internships. It's right here on the slides. And that's where the essay advice is. I also share the videos which are on, I link the videos from the channel. But yeah, I went through this last year and I had to learn a lot on the go. So I'm very passionate about helping us through the process. So yes, don't be quiet, don't be a stranger. And thank you so much everyone for joining. I appreciate your time. I will be sharing everything and I will stop recording if I can find how to stop recording. Okay, there we go.